Hey everyone, welcome to Unearth with Shelly Hughes podcast. I'm Shelly Hughes. By the end of this podcast, I want to really outline the biggest myth that I see with mainly kind of one-man marketing teams. It's something that I see all the time, and I really want to debunk this myth and make sure that you're just doing marketing without the BS and really streamlining what you have to do and focusing on what's going to make the biggest difference. Like I said, this is Unearth. We really diagnose and unearth the good, the bad, and the ugly of entrepreneurship and marketing. I like to talk about the challenges, the wins, the successes, and celebrations of what it means to grow a passionate and profitable brand, whether you're the business owner or you're kind of the marketing director of the business. So the big myth I want to talk about today is that more content equals better marketing. And, we've been saying that marketing is king, right? But the one thing that I really want to make sure that we are all on the same page with is that, if we don't have a strategy with that content, we can put out all the marketing that we want, and it's really not going to give us anything back. So, for example, social media has gotten so good at their algorithm, putting the right content in front of the right people. So when, clients come to me and they have a ton of different, what I like to call, the old version of content pillars. Maybe it's a service-based business. Maybe let's say it's a financial firm or something like that. And they talk about building a team, and they talk about financial wealth, and they talk about retirement, and they talk about their dog, and maybe in the office, and they have all these different themes of their content. Social media, the algorithms don't exactly know where to put that content, right? So I've said this before, and it's with your marketing and it's with your content. I like to really define when I go into a client meeting and client strategy meeting for social media is, what is the one problem that you solve? What is the one audience you can serve in the deepest way? And really, what is kind of the one service or revenue stream you have to help solve that problem? And then more importantly, what is the one platform that you can really reach the most people, right? So it's all about niching down. The other thing I want to kind of push out there when it comes to content is, you have to have that one message, right? I like when I'm developing a social media strategy for clients, I develop what I like to call a point of view or an opinion as a brand. And this point of view really has to be the North Star of everything you put out. It has to be the main message. It has to be the thing that you feel like isn't done right in your field. It probably is going to ruffle some feathers, but really the more feathers it ruffles, the more it'll attract. I've said this before and I'll say it again. We are not here for 100% of the audience, right? Which means you're probably going to piss off about 80% of people out there. But it doesn't really matter because you're only here for the 20%. You're not here for your high school or college friends, right? Even your personal Instagram, and your personal social media. If you're a founder and entrepreneur, your personal content is not for your high school friends anymore. Your personal content and your personal pages are for your business. So you have to really start treating it like that. And so my point of this is, if we have a bunch of different content pillars, for me, for example, I could talk about a million different things. I could talk about business and motherhood and marketing and our dog and, team building and all these different things, but it just really dilutes the focus of my content instead of, telling the algorithm exactly who I want to put my content in front of. So that is something that I really want to make sure I talk about in today's episode is, being really focused on your content. And two, a lot of you guys out there are one person marketing teams, right? If you think, okay, I have to put out, I have to post every single day and I have to put out a ton of social, write a ton of blogs to help with SEO. I just need to be everywhere. You're really going to be stretched way too thin. Burnout is real. You're going to have a diluted brand voice. And really, there's no time for optimization and really looking at what's making the biggest difference. And so what I really recommend and what to do instead is focusing on that quality over quantity. And I know this is kind of, yeah, of course, Shelly, but when I say quality, I mean, okay, before we even start posting, let's think about how your audience buys, right? So, and that's when we can look at organic content versus paid content, right? You know, if I think social media is such a good way to nurture and bring people through that funnel. So when I develop content pillars now for clients and when my team does, we don't think of content pillars like we did think of content pillars back in like 2016. The themes that we talk about. How we think of content pillars is basically simplifying the sales pipeline. So pillar one is going to be demand generation. We are generating the demand. That's going to be very much point of view content. It's going to ruffle some feathers. It's really to get as many eyeballs on you as possible. Pillar two content is going to be demand conversion. So that is content. It talks about your services. It talks about your unique value proposition. It gets people to download a lead magnet, whatever that is. And each of these pillars have different ways to track performance, right? So pillar one content might be views and reach. And, pillar two content might be, traffic to site, clicks on profile, things like that. Where pillar three content is really all about brand loyalty and advocacy. And so that is more like, okay, here's our story. Here's a little bit more about us. It's about, saving content and maybe a little deeper look into the process. And so, for KPIs when it comes to pillar three content is going to be like website visits. It's going to be upselling clients. It's going to be customer lifetime value. It's going to be things like that. So, and it is really focusing on what is that main platform that is going to drive the most, right? If what I have seen in the past is, yes, people are going to more long form content. So that's like kind of where YouTube lives. But I've seen great success in Pinterest and LinkedIn ads. I think LinkedIn is having this resurgence. I'm really hoping it's not turning into a Facebook. But LinkedIn is getting so much more engagement, and specifically for ads, it's getting really popular. The thing about LinkedIn ads that you have to think about is, it's much more expensive than like Meta ads. Meta ads is like the cheapest, wham bam, thank you ma'am, like put ads out there. Where LinkedIn, because it is geared more towards, probably B2B, they just up the prices, right? But if you have like $3,000 a month to spend on, paid ads, that might be a really interesting way to go. And same thing with Pinterest. Pinterest is getting so popular. We actually, we're launching a Pinterest campaign for one of our ed tech clients because, teachers are a really big focus for them. And so that's the other thing. You have to think about where your audience lives. So we were doing a ton of meta ads and going into, teacher Facebook groups and things like that. But really where teachers live, where teachers spend their time and where they're begging for content and from an education point of view is Pinterest. So pick that one channel and really go deep on that. Double down on evergreen, right? Instead of chasing all those trends constantly, focus on content that really stays relevant. That's really going to help with your ROI. Also, it's evergreen content, so you can post the same thing over and over and over again. Maybe you edit it a little bit differently, or honestly, maybe you don't. That's one thing that, I have to explain to clients and my social teams have to explain to clients is, we might post about, our client's unique point of view. And through our approval process, the client will say like, oh, we just posted about that, 3 weeks ago. It's like, yeah, of course. A thing to remember is social media is so fleeting that we think we sound like a broken record, but just as much as I do, it takes 7 to 12 touches to make a sale. So even if we have to repeat the unique value proposition, we have to repeat our unique point of view as a brand to make people say, oh, I feel the same way, or they put it into the perfect words. That's exactly what I was thinking. So don't afraid to be repetitive in your content because most of your followers probably don't even see your content, right? So, and if they do, they're going to scroll right by. And that's where Pinterest is so interesting too, because for something like Instagram, a reel might have a lifespan of, let's just say, a week. But Pinterest is the social media platform that keeps on giving, right? you can pin something 5 years ago and it's still getting engagement 5 years later, right? Because it in itself is one of the first social media platforms, other than kind of YouTube, to really turn into a search engine. It's basically like a Google, right? Instagram, of course, is becoming more like that. But really focusing on the evergreen content and the what is the message that you have to repeat over and over and over again to kind of get it through your audience's head. And then, it's all about kind of repurposing content, right? I like to call it the content funnel. So we have macro platforms and we have micro platforms. Macro platforms can be something like your blog, your newsletter, your podcast. It's kind of more the long form content, right? It could even be, if you write white papers, it could be a book, right? It's that macro content. Then there's micro content. Micro content is basically all the social media platforms. Micro content can be, like TikTok and Pinterest and even SMS, right? It could be X. That's kind of more the micro content. And so what you do is you can take, let's just say let's focus on kind of email. You write one bomb badass blog post, right? It's kind of your flagship post. From that, you can have multiple email newsletters. You can take you can make 150 tweets out of a single blog post if it's solid enough. You can create multiple social media, you know, um, posts on Instagram. You can take that and use that kind of as your transcription for a long-term video. What can you do with that video? Cut it down into YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts are getting really popular. Cut it into TikToks, cut it into Reels. So it's repurposing that content and making it that content tsunami where it's all pushing back up to the main piece of content, but you're just repurposing everything, right? The other thing is building a mini funnel for each piece, right? What do you want the person to do? Do you want to drive a service? Do you want to get them on an email list? Do you want them to send you a DM? So don't just ghost and post, really have intention behind every single piece of content that you have. And that's much more obvious when you get into, email newsletters and drip campaigns, which we can get to another time. But one of the most important things is use what's working more than once. So for another one of our social media clients, they are a financial group, and we saw that LinkedIn was converting the best to get people to their website more than any other platform. So we are doubling down on LinkedIn and utilizing a lot of the things that LinkedIn really wants to promote. So if a social media platform puts out something new, utilize that new thing because they're going to reward the profiles that do, right? So LinkedIn, they really want people to use their events, tool on their platform. They really want people to use LinkedIn articles. People are going to be going to your website less and less, right? SEO is getting so competitive. So we are really doubling down on LinkedIn and utilizing all the little elements of LinkedIn because we've seen that LinkedIn is really their platform. So don't just post and ghost. Don't just post content and try to recreate the wheel. Really go back and look at the last 90 days and say, okay, in the metrics we're trying to achieve, because you can't achieve all of them, what gave us the best ROI? Yeah, that's kind of where we are with, the biggest myth about social media. And I think in the next episode, I want to get into, okay, what is kind of that minimum viable content strategy? How can we really narrow our focus and really go into this as not just marketing without the BS, but social media without the BS? Let's focus in what we have to do and really make it so that you don't get burnt out with your content. If you like this episode, please like and review. I really appreciate it. And send this to a friend who you think would be, it would be beneficial for them to hear this. Okay. Have a good one.